The narrative on day one of the Rick Perry campaign. Perry is an unstoppable Chuck Norris-like figure who will roundhouse kick his way through the Republican primary and all the way to the White House. The narrative on day 3 of the Perry campaign? What did he just say? As Kevin Drum wrote at Mother Jones, considering that his campaign is only 3 days old, doesn't it seem as if Rick Perry has been doing a pretty remarkable job of confirming his reputation as a Texas League chucklehead? I may not go so far as to say chucklehead, but it's a good term, isn't it? But the Texan has been running more like an insurgent Republican, more like a Michelle Bachmann, than like a guy thinking about the general election. First, of course, there was his threat of mob violence against Ben Bernanke.
If this guy prints more money between now and the election, I don't know what y'all would do to him in Iowa, but we would treat him pretty ugly down in Texas.
You know when you know you've gone too far? When you draw a rebuke from Karl Rove.
Governor Perry is going to have to fight the impression that he's a cowboy from Texas. This simply added to it.
Then Perry suggested President Obama, maybe, kind of, sort of, somebody should figure out if he loves America.
No, you need to ask him. I'm saying you're a good reporter. Go ask him.
And he suggested the military wouldn't respect a civilian commander-in-chief.
One of the reasons, one of the powerful reasons that I'm running for the presidency of the United States is to make sure that every young man and woman who puts on the uniform of this country respects highly the President of the United States.
And then he said we could solve the drug cartel problem on the Mexican-American border by using drones. The only problem, we've been using drones for the last 6 years. And if he was governor of Connecticut, who cares? But the drones are flying around Perry's state. You'd think he might have noticed. Now, look, campaigns are hard. Candidates who look good on paper and have been successful in a particular political culture don't always know how to tailor their appeal to the broad American middle. But we have to see if Rick Perry is one of those. For more on this, we're joined now by Alex Wagner, an MSNBC analyst and a reporter for the Huffington Post. And with us from Austin, Texas Monthly senior executive editor Paul Burka. Alex, let me begin with you. Perry is doing well in polls, and he began with a sort of a rapturous reception. But he seems to be running basically to the far right. He does not seem sort of like Romney does to be running as the front runner, as somebody who expects to face the general electorate.
Sure. I mean, and I think that that's a specific choice. I mean, he's not trying to be the establishment pick that looks good on the back of a quarter. This is the guy from Texas who comes from an incredibly hard scrabble background, who's made tough choices, and who has a quote unquote tough economic record in Texas that has so far, in theory, served him well. Although you have plenty of economists who've sort of debunked a lot of the Texas myth about job creation that he's overseen. I think, one thing that we know from Rick Perry's life is Rick Perry does things Rick Perry's way. He's populated the Texas State House with friends of his. He has a strong control over his administration. I think that the same is going to be true for this campaign. It's going to be done his way.
And Peter, you wrote a really fantastic piece for the Texas Monthly entitled Dear Yankee, 8 Things You Should Know About Rick Perry. So I'm going to ask you this as a Yankee, or at least as a Californian. Perry was dominant in Texas politics for more than a decade now. But does he have the ability to bring his appeal beyond the state's borders?
Well, he has a personal appeal. Perry is a great campaigner. He's always been a great campaigner. That's what he's been known for. There are those in Texas who thinks that he enjoys campaigning more than governing, in fact. So, yes, I think that he can shake the hands, rouse the crowds. Remember, he was a Yale leader at Texas A&M. That's somebody who is a professional rouser of crowds. He has those skills, but of course, this is a different game. There's that question that was raised earlier about whether he could appeal to the middle. I don't think Perry wants to appeal to the middle. I don't think that's never been his plan. His plan is, I'm going to get as far to the right as I can and get as many people from that group as I can, and then try to make that my constituency. And it's worked for him in Texas. And absolutely.
And that goes sort of to, I think, one of the big questions about him, which is that one way to look at all this is that it's a lack of message discipline. He's got a great story to tell on jobs. I mean, as you say, there are questions being raised by some economists about it, but it is a good story. There are good lines there. It's a clear story. It's one responsive to the current economic moment. And is he just stepping on that, or is he made a decision that the thing to do, as Peter said and as you suggested in your first answer, is go to the right? And if that's true, is that even a good idea in the Republican primary? Because instead of going after Romney's voters, it seems like now he's going to try to split with Bachmann.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things to unpack there, Ezra. One is, it seems like, yes, the economic message has taken a backseat to this kind of swaggering, I run and shoot coyotes or snakes when I'm, with a handgun when I'm jogging.
Hollow point bullets.
And now we all know what a Yell leader is, which is something that that's evidence of his sort of charisma has in some ways eclipsed what he's done in Texas. I think in the long run, though, you're going to see a strong pivot back to that message, and I think both on the right and the left. Look, the White House would love a discussion about the role of the government in public life. Rick Perry has a very, very different model than Barack Obama, and in that sense, I can see both sides trying to push a broader debate on those terms.
And that does bring us to the role of government in Perry's life, or at least under Perry's control. Peter, one of the parts of your piece I found really interesting was you said his great accomplishment was he was able to take the weak Texas governorship and amass power. By amassing power and bringing his allies into key positions, he was able to actually make it a strong governorship. Can you give us the quick version here of what he did?
What Perry has done, and we did have a weak governorship, but he has taken his friends and his allies and he has packed them in every state agency so that the bureaucracy that would normally run the state doesn't run the state. The governor's office runs the state. He tells his allies what to do, and that's true from everything from the teacher retirement system to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Perry gives the orders. And certainly it's true in education as well. So in agency after agency, the governor is all powerful, and the legislature just doesn't buck him because Perry usually wins when they do try to confront him.
Something to keep in mind. Paul Burke and Alex Wagner, thank you so much for joining me.